ESPN dropped its summer forecast and it has the Bulls going 31-51 again, much like they did last season. Same record as last season, but I want to take a look at this and say this is not necessarily saying that ESPN hates Chicago. I do think there is some doubt around the rebuild of Chicago, and that's understandable. But I want to talk about why, even if the Chicago Bulls do have the same record as last season, why that could actually mean that the Chicago Bulls actually improved as a roster. We're going to talk a little bit about that, the Eastern Conference, how deep it is, things like that. We're also going to talk about what Tiago Splitter means for Buzelis' development, as it's been a heavy topic over the last couple of days. And with Quincy Pondexter becoming the Windy City Bulls head coach, can the Bulls actually turn the Windy City Bulls into a full-fledged development program? And would sending Noa Essengue and Dailyn Swain down there necessarily be the worst thing for those two players? We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go into this content for today. Oh, by the way, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Trying to get to our goal of 40,000 subscribers by the start of the season. We had a goal of 50,000 subscribers. It's not as much time there. We still got a goal of getting to 50K. We're going to get there, but we can only do that with your guys' help. About 40% of you guys that watch the channel every single day are not subscribed. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Help a brother out. Help us get to our goal. For that, though, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about ESPN's predictions for the Chicago Bulls. Buzelis, can he make the Deni Avdija type leap under Tiago Splitter? And we're going to be discussing as well at the end of the show what Dailyn Swain and Noa Essengue can really gain from the G League, even though I don't want to see him go down there, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's go ahead and get into it, right? We're going to start off with ESPN and the prediction of the Bulls going 31-51 yet again on the season. This I don't want to view this one as disrespect. Now, ESPN has had some wild articles in regards to the Chicago Bulls, and I know there are a lot of Bulls fans that look at this team and they really do think we can compete for that last play-in spot. I'm not here to tell y'all any of y'all are wrong in that regard. That's not what it's here to do. That's not what this is here to say at all. So please don't take it that way. I'm more so using this to say this, right? Is that a projection of 31 wins and again being 13th in the East, which I will say this, as much as I'm not turning this article into a disrespect, segment, it did feel like because they predicted the Bulls being 13th in the East, they kind of backdoored themselves into that, but it is what it is, right? The teams that they had ahead of the Chicago Bulls had the Charlotte Hornets slightly ahead of the Chicago Bulls, and they also had the 10th place team in the Eastern Conference being at 44 wins. Now, that kind of coincides with what we saw last season, right? Last season was the first year, I think, since the play-in was a thing, that every team in the playoffs and the play-in in the Eastern Conference was above 500, right? So the tone in the Eastern Conference has changed. For what it's worth, they had the Knicks predicted as number one with 53 wins. The Pistons also with 53 wins. The Cavs at 51. The 76ers at 50. The Celtics at 48. Then you had Atlanta at 47. Miami at 47. Toronto at 45. Indiana at 44. And then Orlando Magic at 44 as well. 10th as well. So then you have that. And then you have the Chicago Bulls coming down to 13th, right? So, it's not the worst prediction with the Chicago Bulls, right? They could be right about the Chicago Bulls, and the record could still be wrong about how much better they've actually improved. And that's kind of what I want to focus on, right? But you guys know I like to talk about everything's points, counterpoints. So let's talk about why ESPN could be right in regards to this angle. The Chicago Bulls are a rebuilding team. And when a rebuilding team and with so many young pieces, there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, the Bulls have supported those young pieces, but there are going to be veterans in the rotation. Josh Giddey is not really what I consider. He's a young player, but he's long into his NBA career, so he's somewhere in that range between a vet and a young player still, because he is still evolving his game, right? But you have Norman Powell, you have Trey Jones, you have Jalen Smith, you have Nic Claxton, right? All these guys are projected to have major roles on this team. Zach Collins, if he's healthy, is going to play. He is going to play. But then you have guys like Caleb Wilson. He's a rookie, right? And with that is gonna come normal rookie mistakes and normal rookie hurdles that every rookie goes through, no matter how good they are their rookie year. Miles Buzelis is still developing. We're hoping to see that step from Miles Buzelis, that he takes that next step as a scorer and hopefully even a leap in year 3, right? But then you get into like Josh Giddey. There are some questions nationally about Josh Giddey. Some Bulls fans, of course, feel a little bit more confident in that. I'm one of those guys, but there are still nationally questions about Josh Giddey. Dailyn Swain's a rookie. We don't know if Dailyn Swain's even going to play. I just talked about him possibly going to the G League. Noa Essengue, 19 years old, still very young and very raw. We don't know what that's going to happen. Rob Dillingham's proven himself. Leonard Miller had some flashes last season, but I can't knock anybody who doesn't want to look at Leonard Miller and just say, oh, boom, he's going to be a hit, right? So we'll see. And then you still have Tiago Splitter. While he was a head coach for the majority of last season, this is his first time being hired as a head coach. His first time hiring his own staff. He had the staff of Chauncey Billups last year. That was the staff that Chauncey Billups put together. And the roster direction and play style wasn't necessarily coming into that season what Tiago turned it into. So again, ESPN isn't necessarily predicting the Chicago Bulls to be a win-now team. They're looking at this and saying that they're going to be a rebuilding team, which I do think is fair. This is a team that is still trying to figure out their way, even though there's more balance. But let's talk about the flip side of this. Why ESPN may be a little bit too low on the Chicago Bulls. This roster is clearly better constructed than what it has been the last few years. It just has more balance, especially in that starting lineup. You see the fit that those guys can have together. The style of play, on paper looks really solid as far as that transition. You have your go-to scorer in Norman Powell. You're hoping that Modest can take that step in there. Then you got defensive aces in Nic Claxton and Caleb Wilson, right? You have those guys. You added Norman Powell. You added Nic Claxton. And so that starting five together is going to be a solid starting five as far as the balance and the play style. Then you have young players that you're hoping are going to grow together. The Giddey, the Caleb, the Leonard Millers, the Rob Dillinghams, those guys, your Modest Buzelis, you're hoping all those guys grow together, right? Also, I can't wait to see how the coaching structure change under Tiago Splitter, right? Like, again, not tonight. I know people want to keep knocking Billy Donovan and all that type of stuff. He's gone now. It is what it is. We're happy about it. We got Tiago Splitter in here. But what Tiago does in his philosophies and how he wants to utilize players is naturally going to be a little bit different. So wanting to see what they do with that is there, right? So I'll say this. If the if the Chicago Bulls having better balance on this roster, hoping for internal development, all that type of stuff, if it does not lead into improvement in the win column, it doesn't mean it didn't lead to improvement on the floor. And that's the part that's a little bit difficult to really gather from these kind of predictions, especially this part of the season. So I think when you look at that, like the things that have to go right to be a little bit better than that are the things that we know, the things that we've talked about. Caleb is better projected as a rookie, than people. Maybe he has a rookie of the year type season. Modest actually makes that leap. Nic Claxton gets back closer to the player that he was a few years ago, right? Josh Giddey, now that he really has the keys to the offense, it seems like, he's able to elevate players like that. So, we'll see. But what has to go wrong, right? I talked about how the Bulls can get 31 wins and it still be a solid season. But I think, like, if Caleb Wilson looks like a normal rookie rather than making a huge impact in his first year, that's a possibility. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be still going to be a star. It just means he had a normal rookie year. If Modest doesn't make the scoring leap and stays more around 16 to 17 points per game instead of making that push closer towards a 20-point per game player, it can happen, right? Nic Claxton fails to move the defense forward, right? He fails to make that impact on the defensive side of the ball. And then while we have, potential on the bench, none of these players end up turning into it. You look at Dillingham, Swain, Leonard Miller, Essengue, Patrick Williams, all these guys all end up being a big fail, right? There's a possibility for that. But I will say, ESPN took the pessimistic route, which a lot of people are doing for the Bulls. And in fairness, even with me being a huge Bulls fan for my life, is that there's reason for pessimism around this team. But I do think this, like, you look at it, Modest can make that leap to be a 20-point per game scorer. He showed it in the month of March last year. The question now is, can you do it for a season, especially when the defense may be more focused on you? Caleb Wilson already looks like that shot profile is well ahead of where people thought it was going to be. So if he ends up being one of the better rookies in this class, which he was predicted to be, and having one of the higher ceilings in this class, it could turn around. And then, as I've been saying for a while now, you just need one of Leonard Miller, Rob Dillingham, Dailyn Swain, Noa Essengue. You need one of those players to turn into real rotation players for you. If you can get two, man, that's going to be a really good look to support that starting five, especially with those veterans that we have on the bench. So the question now becomes about Haize, you said at the beginning of this that a 31-win season could still be successful in the development part of it. And that's what you have to do. If you walk away from this feeling confident, Caleb Wilson is a future star. Modest averages over 20. Looks like he's made that leap. Josh Giddey plays great in his role of elevating this offense, right? Leonard Miller ends up turning into, still especially heading into restricted free agency, turns into a player that, and this is another part that I'm going to talk about too, Leonard Miller, if he does hit a big growth this season, I do want to say this. That could make him a trade chip in restricted free agency, especially with how we've seen restricted free agency go. I'll cover that more in depth tomorrow because that is going to be something that I think a lot of people aren't going to want to hear, but it is a possibility that he could turn into an asset if he has a major season and the Bulls look at it and say, hey, we got to get ready to pay, Modest. We ain't about to pay Leonard Miller under restricted free agency. He could turn into a player that you trade, much like Peyton Watson. Could end up being something like that. We'll talk about that more on tomorrow's episode, right? But if you do those type of things, and then also I think the game to game, if the Bulls are competitive but are losing close games because of the young mistakes, that means that you've taken a step forward as a team, and I can't really be mad at that. The real measurement for the Chicago Bulls isn't necessarily going to be wins or losses, especially not early. It's going to be, does your starting five actually work together the way that it seems like it will on paper, right? Does Nic Claxton and other players really create a defensive identity for this team as long as with Tiago Splitter's defensive system? Do Caleb and Modest look like that future duo that can lead your team going forward into the future? And then are the Bulls competitive against winning teams, or do they get run off the floor? Those things I think that you can have, a successful season, even if it does end up in 31 to 35 wins. But if some of those things come together, as I talked about, this team could push well past the 31-win prediction. The Eastern Conference is just extremely deep as well, so you're going to have to see how that works out. So we'll see. All right, moving on from that, next topic I want to talk about, can Tiago Splitter unlock Modest Buzelis like he did Deni Avdija? Now, I'm not comparing them as players, even though there are some similarities to the way that they are probably going to play under this. This ain't a copy and paste comparison, but I want to take away from the lesson that we learned of what Tiago Splitter did with Deni Avdija, right? He made a huge offensive leap under Tiago Splitter, and I'm not just talking about as a scorer. He also made a leap as a hub as well, being able to facilitate. There were times he ran the point, he ran the offense, right? And so I do think that, all the credit shouldn't necessarily be given to just, Tiago did all this, because Deni had to put in the work. Deni also had been progressing as a player, right? But he all put it together. Deni was already improving long before Tiago Splitter ever coached him. But I do think the jump is really worth looking at what happened in that jump, right? One of the biggest lessons that you can learn from the jump that Deni Avdija made was that the pressure he put on the rim. The free throw jump was one of the most important jumps that Deni Avdija made as a player last year, because it showed that he was able to put that pressure on teams. He was able to put pressure on defenses. He was able to collapse defenses, which then is why his passing also took a bit of a step up as well, right? When you look at Deni Avdija and the leap that he made free throw wise, and this is what I think that if you're talking about anything that Modest Buzelis can copy, Modest Buzelis can do this. Deni made the leap from being a 5 free throw per game player to 9.2. He also went from shooting at 78% to 80.2%. When you look at over the last 3 years, he went from a player that was only getting to the free throw line 2.2 times up to 3.6, then up to 5.2, and then up to 9.2 last season. That is the type of pressure that I really want to see. For a long time, we talked about Modest Buzelis. He has too quick of a first step. He's too agile, and he has too much athleticism for him not to be able to get to the free throw line a little bit more. Then, as he used that free throw shooting to then also increase his scoring, because then teams had to play him better because they were playing him for the drive. He became a lot more aggressive. He played with force. He pressured the defense, pressured the rim, all those type of things. Modest has talked about wanting to attack a little bit more, and that's where Tiago Splitter, I feel like, can really help Modest Buzelis, is get that attack mindset. That's what he has to do, right? Deni Avdija didn't become an all-star because he became Steph Curry and shot a bunch of threes. It was because of the aggressiveness that he played with, and that's a sign I think a lot of us want to see from Modest Buzelis this year. He needs more point forward reps. That's it, right? I think that even secondary stars, secondary players, third players even, you have to create more. Modest Buzelis he was touted as a modern point forward. That is where I think that we really need to grow him, and that's where I say I want to see Modest become the stagger player with the Chicago Bulls with that bench unit. Let him initiate offense with the bench. Let him run some pick and rolls. Let him attack mismatches and close out. Let him make that second read in regards to it as well. If Modest really makes that step to his game this season, the sky's really the limit. It's not really just about mid-range shots alone, right? We talked about the mid-range yesterday, him wanting to be a 3-level scorer, but let's talk about that part of it too. Then I think also, if Modest does take that step as a point forward, that's when you can run actions with Modest, Buzelis, and Caleb Wilson. Modest Buzelis handling the ball, Caleb Wilson setting screens for that. Then, if the defense attacks and switches, Modest Buzelis attacks. He can attack a big, which he has a quicker first step, more athleticism, and Caleb then gets the smaller defender on him, and you can let Caleb Wilson go to work, right? If they don't switch, then you have Caleb Wilson rolling to the basket, and then with that, you have Caleb Wilson's ball handling, and Modest can screen and pop. So it's that part of it. I think what a Modest and Caleb actions would look like, it'll give both these players creation reps to really kind of throw them into not empty isolation type situations. And that's what you want to see, right? I think that a Modest version of the Denny leap looks like this, right? 20 to 22 points per game, 6 to 7 rebounds, 3 to 4 assists. If you can get between 5 and 6 free throws per game, I think that's really good there. Better strength, better downhill creation, and a smarter shot diet, right? That goes into not just spamming threes, which Modest Buzelis talks about. If Modest Buzelis gives you all those things at age 21, the conversation around the Chicago Bulls and the next steps next summer really do change quite considerably, right? And that's what you want to see from Modest Buzelis. And I think that's what Tiago Splitter could naturally create here for the Chicago Bulls. He just has to put in the work to do so. So we'll see what he does. I predicting leaps is difficult. And sometimes leaps don't happen when you think they should happen the most. Sometimes they do come later than what you expected. Sometimes they do come in year 4 or maybe the beginning of year 5. And I mean, Denny Avdia made his leap in year 6? Year 6 for Denny Avdia when he made that leap. So, I don't want to put it all and just say it has to happen in year 3, but it would make a lot of things clearer if he does that. And then you got to look at it. If he does it in year 3, that means he's doing it the year before and has still another full season before his contract extension is due. And that would be really good for the Chicago Bulls and for Modest Buzelis rather than just to do it the season before. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys think when you look at the Denny Avdia leap and you see how the free throws and the on-ball creation really helped Denny make that leap. Do you think that Modest can do that? Do you think those reps are even going to be available for Modest Buzelis with having Trey Jones and Josh Giddey as point guards that can always run the offense? Let me know what you guys think on that part down below. Last topic of the day that I want to talk about, right, is that the G League, right? Quincy Pondexter was hired as the Windy City Bulls head coach. And if you guys have been watching me for a while, I've been wanting the Bulls to actually use the Windy City Bulls, the G League program, to actually develop players for a long time. And I do think that development plan is different for each player. And that's just the reality of it. We got players like Toby Awaka, Jalen Sellers. We got those guys in the building that are going to have a lot of reps and opportunities down with the Windy City Bulls. And I think that Jalen Sellers, for example, should be eyeing, hey, I want that final spot. I'm about to be the backup shooting guard. I'm about to come in here and be ahead of all you motherfuckers. But outside of that, right, with Quincy Pondexter now leading the G League, coming over from college, those type of things, I do think that there is a mindset that, and especially his history, right, people will quickly quote, well, when you look at the number of lottery picks that then end up going to the G League, it's like, yeah, I get that, and you're not wrong. I want to be clear, you are not wrong at all. But the thing with that is that we're seeing the G League still evolve and how it's been used. So some of that data isn't really as relevant as what you think it was because of how the G League was looked at as a joke for so long. And now teams are slowly starting to take it more seriously, right? And I want to be clear here, right? I don't think that going down to the G League should naturally just be looked at as a knock. It should be looked at as, hey, let's get these guys some reps. Noa Essengue is somebody that needs reps. Now, I want to see both these guys come in and compete and make Tiago Splitter want to play them. I do. That's what I ultimately want. But Noa Essengue is 19 years old. The Chicago Bulls front court is very crowded this season. When you look at Modest, Caleb, Jalen Smith, right? You got Leonard Miller there. Still, that's going to try to get minutes. Some people think Patrick Williams still going to play minutes. You have a lot of players that are going to play down there. It's just the reality of it, right? So now I'll say this: if Noa Essengue is even getting 10 real NBA minutes a night, it's going to be more impactful than 25 minutes in the G League. That's just my personal opinion on it, but we'll see, right? So if Noah can get it has to get those real minutes in the G League, I don't necessarily think that's bad if the Bulls do it right. And that means that let them handle the ball, let them rebound, let them run some offense, let them play through contact, let them be featured. Like, those are things that aren't going to happen at the NBA level for him yet, and that's how you can jumpstart development. Dailyn Swain's a little bit different. Dailyn Swain, I think, should be on the quicker path to NBA minutes, mainly because of the thinness that we have at our backup shooting guard position, and he should do that. You look at how he produced across the board. He led that Texas team in points, rebounds, and assists, right? So I do think that's something that, the confidence wavered in Summer League, and I know some Bulls fans have made their ultimate determination on Dailyn Swain already based off Summer League. It is what it is. But I do think that if Dailyn does go down to the G League and he's able to handle the ball, make quick decisions, run the pick and rolls, those type of things, it could help his development as well. Both these guys should be coming into training camp with the idea of, I'm about to be in this rotation and on this roster and not in the G League. But I do think if you use the G League as an actual shuttle to the NBA minutes, then that's what you can get, right? Have players go down for specific assignments. Let them work on skills in real games and real competition. Then test those skills, come back up against NBA players, even if it's backups, those type of things. Then you rinse and you repeat. This is what if you're going to talk about this team being the next great development powerhouse, which Bryson Graham, with bringing in Jordan Brink, with having Tiago Splitter, everything is all focused on development. You got to show it, right? Now, I'm not saying that everybody that's down in the G League, like a Jalen Sellers or Toby Waka, needs to turn into the next starters for the Chicago Bulls, but you better damn well start developing some of your next role players, because this roster, if things work out, this roster can get expensive very quickly. We're talking about over the next 3 or 4 years, this roster becoming very expensive. You have Modest's extension. Eventually, Josh Giddey's going to need an extension. Caleb Wilson can need an extension. Leonard Miller can need an extension, right? You're talking about all these different things that could end up working out to where if those things do, this roster could become expensive. Then if Modest does hit the leap, if Caleb Wilson is ahead of schedule, if Josh Giddey is what we think he can be, right? If all those things happen, and then you say, let's go out and get a star to kind of get this roster over the top, that after they prove they can get to the playoffs, that's where development matters the most. That is where getting every bit of the talent of players on your roster matter the most. And that's what the Windy City Bulls should be. It should be a shuttle to get to the NBA and to develop certain skills, not an exile from an NBA roster. And we'll see, right? So success is going to look different from each of these players. Noah, of course, you want him to be a switchable defender. You want him to rebound. You want him to finish in transition, and you want him to have that weak side defense. And I think for Dailyn Swain, if he can become a secondary ball handler, if he can become a really solid wing defender, which I think is much like Io did in his early rookie year, make an impact defensively first. If your offense or your shot's not falling, find a way to impact the defense every single night. Then cut. Be a respectable shooter. Those type of things. If that happens for these two guys, that'll be a really good path, because these two players could be swing players long-term for the Bulls. If Dailyn Swain and Noa Essengue turn into real NBA players for you, while you have Modest, Caleb, Leonard Miller, Josh Giddey, all those guys also, continue to go the path that we want to see them go, that is where you can find real talent. So let's see if the Bulls can do that, man. Let's see what these guys can do as well, because they're going to have to want it. It's not just on the coaching staff. You can't develop a turd into a gem, right? There has to be something in those players already that you just got to polish off and then get the most out of. And it's up to those guys to show that day in and day out. And that's why how they come into training camp is going to be really important. This Bulls training camp needs to be one of the most competitive training camps that we've seen from a Bulls system in a long time, because there's so much up in air about what this team could be. There's still so much up in air about the spots on this team. There's so much up in air about that real bench rotation could be outside of Trey Jones and Jalen Smith. Come in there to that fighting. And if you come in and fight, hey, make the most of it. And that's for Dailyn Swain, that's for Noa Essengue, that's for Jalen Sellers, that's for all these guys. Come in and fight. Don't let what's going on right now, or the talk around Bulls Nation, the talk around the NBA, stop you from realizing, hey, this is your opportunity to get to live your dream. Go out there and make the most of it. Let's see if they can do that. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Y'all, I want to appreciate you guys, man. Let me know your guys' thoughts on ESPN predicting a 31-win season for the Chicago Bulls. And what would you need to see even in a 31-win season that would tell you that this Bulls team is progressing and moving towards the right direction? Sound off on that down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or live stream. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.